Welcome back to Heroic Book Adventures. I'm Steve, and today I'm doing the Worth Every Page Big Books tag. These are the mammoths, the ones you got to be careful not to drop on your toes while you're reading them, but that you still feel are worth every page. So this tag was created by Shelly Swearingen, and I was tagged by Emily from M Reads, a continuing education. So I'm going to link both of them below. Thank you both. A mammoth is described as a book that's 800 pages or more, but it's not a set in stone cutoff. So books that are close to the 800 range are fine too. Just to be clear, I'm not necessarily recommending any of these to you. They're just some big chonkers that I personally really liked and thought were worth my time. So the first one I've got is Edward Rutherford Sarum, historical fiction, the novel of England. It starts with the earliest settlers onto the island and follows them through all of the events of history. So it's Edward Rutherford is much like James Meisner, where their historical fiction is more zoomed out and follows a specific area through its history over time. So that's kind of what I like. Don't be fooled by the size of this mass market paperback. That is a true 1,000-pager. And the second one I got is, maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but it's the complete fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, because of course these are all of his short stories collected, but I personally always read it all together at once. I can't just pick one story and read it. So the first time I read all of his work was in a different edition where I think it was in 4 or 5 volumes, and that didn't make one of the moves I made. So I ended up getting this collection of all of them. So yeah, you're in the hands of a master when you're reading Lovecraft. Next one's kind of similar. It's the Complete Chronicles of Conan by Robert E. Howard. This is the centenary edition to celebrate the 100th year of his birth. And it's published in 2006 by Gollancz. It's got the end pages, have a map of the Hyborian Age, and it collects all of his stories in their original condition. And it also has some drafts and fragments and things like that he left behind before his tragic death. So, what is best in life? This is. Some of you may be aware that I have a very high level of training in marksmanship from my previous career. So I'm into ballistics. And this is Ken Waters' Pet Loads. So it's a compilation of all of the articles that Waters wrote for Handloader magazine for decades. So he would basically take a cartridge each month and on his range try testing different bullet weights and shapes and different powders and charges, and then would document all of his findings and thoughts on it. So this is a lifetime's worth of work from this man. It was very interesting. And even though it's a reference manual, I'm including it here because I actually read this from cover to cover when I first got it. That's how interesting a ballistics nerd like me can find something like this. And then I couldn't find my copy of Atlas Shrugged. I'm guessing I probably unhauled that brick when I moved. But yeah, I'm going there. A lot of people get really heated up as soon as they hear the title Atlas Shrugged because they don't like the politics of the author. But in my opinion, it's a sign of intelligence to be capable of entertaining an idea without fully accepting it. So when somebody gets all triggered up over the mention of a book, it's usually not the book that's the problem. It's okay characters, the story's pretty good, but it's really all about the ideas. I'm not somebody that follows anybody else's ideas of things. I like to just collect information from different sources and formulate my own opinions. But I thought that Atlas Shrugged was thought provoking and it was worth the time for me to read. I think a lot of people doing this tag are probably going to make mention of Stephen King's It and The Stand. I think they were both pretty good books, especially amongst his better ones. When I was younger, I read 15 or 20 of his books, and I thought he was great. And then I eventually went on to read other authors, and I just found other things I like. So he's not my personal favorite. That's not me trying to have a hot take or piss anybody off. I'm just being honest. He's not my favorite. But I did want to mention that if you do like Stephen King's Mammoths, here's a couple other to look out for that I did really enjoy. If you like The Stand, look for Robert McCammon's Swan Song. This is very similar in that it's a post-apocalyptic world where there's a battle between good and evil going on in it. It's a really cool one. And then if you liked It, try out Dan Simmons' Summer of Night. This is another one where a group of kids are growing up in a small town that seems just a little bit off, and they got to face an evil that exists there. So, good stuff. These are a few that fall in just under the 800. They're in the 700 and some page mark. But when I was about 12 years old, I went to a garage sale with my parents, and I bought 2 items there with my own money. One of them was a CD, Ozzy Osbourne's No Rest for the Wicked, and the other was Terry Brooks' The Sword of Shannara. And that was the day that I became a heavy metal fan and a fantasy reader. So I will never forget that day. Now I had my original copy of Sword of Shannara had the really cool Brothers Hildebrandt cover on it. And I must have read that thing like 7 or 8 times. Like I totally it disintegrated. I really should have kept the tattered remnants of that book just to show you guys, because I know you'd all respect what I did to it. But then I come on to booktube and everybody hates this book. I don't know. I really don't care if everybody else hates it. I love this one. You know, it's my precious. And of course, even calling it my precious is ripping off Lord of the Rings. But I'm not a big fan of vampire books in general, but Dan Simmons' Carrie and Comfort was a very unique take on it. And a lot of historical fiction elements into it and that too. So really cool book. And then another Dan Simmons, The Terror. So this is about an expedition to try to go around the Arctic Circle back in the 1800s, and they get stranded out there, and it becomes a survival situation with limited rations and real freezing conditions. But there is also something outside of the ships that's even scarier. So for somebody who's a fan of historical type fiction that wants to try something with some horror injected into it, this is awesome. Dan Simmons is a writer I really enjoy, and it's on my schedule to read a lot more of his stuff coming up. And this last one does not qualify for the page count, but its dimensions certainly make it a mammoth. This is the largest book I own. It is the Times Comprehensive Atlas of the World. They have a smaller version, but this comprehensive one is the really large size one. So, I mean, this thing weighs like 15 pounds. So it's got this really nice slipcase, and then a key with what all the markings on it show. And this is something you can't even read like sitting in a chair. It's just too much. You got to have an actual large table like this to read it. But it's just gigantic maps, and it is comprehensive in that it covers like the entire surface of the earth. And it's even down the road from me, there's an unincorporated community that has a population of about 175 people, and it's actually named on the maps in here. So it really very comprehensive. So anyways, thank you again to Shelly and Emily. And I'm not going to tag anybody because a lot of people kind of avoid the really big books. But if you've read 3 or more mammoths that you thought were worth the read, go ahead and consider yourself tagged. And I will see you plus-sized heroes on our next time-consuming adventure.